Nora Spencer never planned for her day to begin with a burnt espresso and end with a time slip. But then again, she also didn't plan to be dumped on her birthday, lose her rent-controlled apartment to a luxury development, or get ghosted by her therapist. Life had a funny way of spiraling all at once. The lighting was amber, and a ticking grandfather clock stood tall in the corner, its hands frozen at 10:10. No one else was there except a man behind the counter, dressed in suspenders, a bootie, and shiny black shoes that tapped faintly against the tiled floor. He looked like an extra from an old silent film. That morning, she had exactly 30 minutes to get caffeine into her system and sprint to an interview at a boutique PR firm that specialized in celebrity apologies. She could have sworn it wasn't there yesterday. The usual cafe was mobbed, thanks probably to another influencer raving about their gluten-free croissants, so no lid, no sleeve. The buildings, though familiar in shape, lacked the gleaming modernity she was used to. Times Square wasn't screaming with LED billboards or streaming news tickers. The screen was dead. Not cracked, not out of battery, just blank. Lifeless, useless, instead. Painted advertisements covered the buildings, hawking Coca-Cola, cigarettes, and boot polish. "Careful, miss," he said in a cheerful drawl before strolling past. Something was very wrong. Jazz music, playful and full of brass, dancing down the street. Drawn by instinct, she walked toward it, shoes clicking over cobblestone. At the corner, a brass quartet played a ragtime tune while couples danced in the street. Their laughter was like sunlight. Instead of honking cars and screeching brakes, the streets were filled with trolley cars, bicycles, and men pulling wooden carts. The people, all of them, were dressed like they'd fallen out of a classic film. Don't worry. That happens a lot around here. Waistcoats, long coats, feathered hats, high-button boots. She gave Nora a once-over and smirked. It was burnt clearly. In its place stood a tailor shop offering corset fittings and monogrammed handkerchiefs, charcoal in liquid form. More like a subtle jolt, the kind you feel in elevators when the cables catch. Her stomach flipped. She reached for the doorframe, suddenly lightheaded. But she was too polite, too tired, and too frazzled to complain. She offered a weak smile, dropped a $5 bill onto the counter, and turned toward the door. She ducked into a narrow little place wedged between a vintage poster shop and a vape store. The awning simply read, flickers in faded gold script. "I just have a good eye. You look like someone who needs a cocktail and a plan." Nora glanced around. No music, no Wi-Fi, not even a menu. Just dusty shelves filled with antique tins and mismatched teacups. A frame sign near the counter read, "Time waits for no one except inside Flickers." Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of cinnamon and old paper. "Espresso to go?" he asked as she approached. Yeah. She paused. "How did you know?" He gave a sly grin. He disappeared behind a velvet curtain. The espresso arrived in a small porcelain cup. Just as the grandfather clock let out a deep, resonant ding and struck 11:11, the floor shifted beneath her feet, not dramatically. Then she stepped outside, and the world had changed. The sky seemed hazier. "What in the—" Nora choked, spinning round. The cafe was gone. She fumbled for her phone. She took a step back and nearly collided with a man tipping his straw boater hat. Panic bubbled up in her chest. She turned a full circle, heart hammering. She had seen enough movies to recognize the signs. Something was wrong. Then she heard it a sound like joy itself. "You lost, sweetheart?" Nora turned to see a woman with a fingerwave hairstyle, crimson lips, and a fur stole that was definitely not faux. Love the pants. Very futurist. Nora blinked. "I think I've time traveled." The woman grinned. "I'm serious." "So am I." She stuck out a gloved hand. "Name's Ruby." Nora shook her hand, dazed. "Nora Spencer." "Well, Nora Spencer, welcome to New York City circa 1923. It's a hell of a place to land. Nora was still trying to breathe like a normal person as she followed Ruby through the humming sepia-toned streets. It was like walking through a moving museum exhibit, except there were no velvet ropes, and the mannequins were very much alive. You're lucky, landing in 23. The parties are wild. Jazz is king, and the corsets are looser than they used to be. No signage. Just a faint smell of gin and laughter. Start with a drink. It's gin, lemon juice, champagne, and courage. You'll need it. Never heard of it. Nora pulled her phone from her pocket and held it up like evidence. This was working a minute ago. It's dead now. But I swear I'm from 2025, and I know every speakeasy and salon in Midtown. You sure it wasn't a dream? Her mouth puckered, but her shoulders relaxed. Okay, he was tall, with dark curls slicked back and a jaw that could cut glass. His suit was impeccable. His voice, when he spoke, wrapped around the room like velvet. So, that's Jack Remington? Singer, songwriter, heartbreak collector. Half the flappers in the city have sworn off men because of him. I need to find flickers. The singer's voice was deep and smoky, full of something she couldn't quite name. Nostalgia? Grief? Hope? The place I came from? As the last note drifted into the air, Jack's gaze swept the room and landed on her. His brow furrowed slightly, then lifted. He tilted his head as if trying to place her. It might still be here. That's progress, baby. You're wearing pants, and you have the aura of someone who's seen a microwave. It's a vibe. Ruby strolled with confidence, waving to newsboys, cab drivers, and a man selling peanuts from a wooden crate. No one stumbles into 1923 by accident, doll. You're here for a reason. I don't belong here. I was supposed to be at a job interview, and now I don't even know where to start. With red velvet chairs and mirrors that made the small room feel infinite, a trio played soft jazz in the corner. No one looked twice at Nora's pants. Or maybe they did, but quickly looked away, too polite or too intrigued to question her. Nora kept close. Nora stared at her suspiciously. Mr. Remington asked if you'd join him backstage. What is this? Ruby turned down a side street and opened a wrought iron gate into what looked like a hidden alley cafe. Inside, the space was dimly lit. A waiter in suspenders brought 2 glasses of something bubbly. All right, let's say I believe you. You popped through time after drinking bad espresso in a ghost cafe. What do you want to do now? But maybe the city can. This place has its own rhythm, you know. People come here looking for something. Or they get pulled here because they need to find it. Maybe you're not stuck. Maybe you're just supposed to be here a little while. French 75, Ruby said, raising her glass. Nora sipped. Ruby drummed her fingers along the table. I'm sure. Ruby leaned closer, eyes dancing. I want to go home. Can't help you there. Like a layover in history? Ruby grinned. Exactly. As they talked, the lights dimmed and a man took the small stage at the front of the cafe. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you a little number called While the Moon Watches, dedicated to the ones who wander. The music began and Nora forgot to breathe. Ruby leaned in. Wow. Yep, he's got that tragic poet energy. Nora's eyes didn't leave him. Nora looked away, heart racing. He looked at me. Of course he did. Nora laughed, the first real laugh since she arrived. It felt like her lungs had been clenched and were just now remembering how to work. After the set, Jack disappeared behind the curtain. Nora considered leaving, but Ruby stopped her. And you think it's a lounge singer with cheekbones like weaponry? I think it's New York. Magic hides in the most ridiculous places. Before Nora could respond, the waiter returned. Ruby raised an eyebrow. Looks like the adventures found you. Nora followed the waiter through a narrow hallway behind the stage. The music faded, replaced by the distant hum of conversation and the clink of cocktail glasses. She passed crates of instruments, feathered costumes on hangers, and a man asleep in a pile of sheet music. Everything smelled like cigarette smoke and secrets. When they reached the final door, the waiter gave a half bow and disappeared. Nora hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come in," said a voice that still echoed in her bones. She stepped inside. Jack Remington sat in a velvet armchair, his feet kicked up on a steamer trunk. His suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, and a half-empty glass of bourbon rested in one hand. Up close, he looked even more unreal, like a sketch brought to life with charcoal and jazz. "You're not from here," he said casually, like he was commenting on the weather. Nora blinked. "Excuse me? I'm not sure how I got here. I was just late for a meeting. Then I was late for the decade." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Your eyes are full of satellites. The way you flinched at the typewriter in the corner, the way you looked at the rotary phone like it insulted your family. You're not from here. Have you ever met anyone like me before?" Nora sat, heart thudding. "You're very observant." "It's part of the job," he said, sipping his drink. "I watch people. Helps with the lyrics. But you walked in like a question the universe hasn't figured out how to answer yet." Nora stared at the floor. Jack chuckled, a low, rich sound. "Time's tricky like that. Always slipping through your fingers." Closed it, then tried again. "I want to go home, but I also don't know what I'm supposed to do here. It's like the city pulled me in for something." "Do you believe me?" "I believe in strange things. The world's full of invisible doors. Maybe you fell through one." The silence stretched, comfortable and unnerving all at once. Then Jack set his drink down and leaned forward. She looked up at him. "Once," he said after a pause, "years ago, a man with a strange accent and silver shoelaces said he was from 1998. Jack returned to the mic. Nora watched from the side, Ruby beside her. Disappeared 2 weeks later. Ruby peeked in, eyes bright. Slow number that wrapped around Nora like a soft coat. And as she listened, she realized something strange. "They're asking for an encore, Jack. And Nora, if you're not busy avoiding existential dread, I suggest you come out and enjoy it." Left behind a cassette tape no one could play. Nora's eyebrows rose. "You're serious? The music?" The laughter, the impossible serendipity of it all. His poem was warm, calloused, and steady. For the first time since waking up in this strange dreamscape, she didn't feel entirely adrift. "As a broken heart," he said. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "So what do you want, Nora with the space-age sneakers?" She opened her mouth. "Maybe you're here to teach us how to use your magic rectangle," he said, nodding toward her phone. "It's dead." "Most magic is, until you believe in it," Nora laughed. "That's absurd." "So is time travel," he replied with a wink. There was a knock at the door. Jack stood and offered Nora his hand. "Shall we?" She took it. Back in the lounge, the room buzzed with anticipation. "He likes you," Ruby said, nudging her. "No, he's just intrigued by the possibility I'm a time-traveling alien." "Same thing," Ruby said with a smirk. Jack's voice filled the room again, this time with a bluesy. She wasn't panicking anymore. For the first time, she let herself stop searching for the exit and instead began to explore the moment. Maybe the way home wasn't something she had to chase. Maybe it would come when she was ready to leave. After Jack's encore, the crowd thinned and the lounge dimmed to a softer hum. People laughed in clusters, lipstick on cigarette tips, bourbon on breath. Her hands folded in her lap as she watched Jack scribble in a worn notebook between sips of something suspiciously green. Ruby plopped beside her, holding a sardine sandwich and a pickle spear. Jazz still clinging to the walls like perfume. Then I realized I was afraid of heights and mildly allergic to clouds. Nora sat on a piano bench near the bar. "You know," Ruby said, mouth half full, "when I was your age, I wanted to be a pilot. I don't think I have that choice." "You just haven't figured out how to pick it yet," Nora chuckled. Allergic to clouds. That's what I told myself. Really, I just didn't want to leave the ground. What are we talking about? The universe doesn't make mistakes. Only people do. Existential crises or cloud allergies. Nora, you ever consider the possibility that you were sent here to change something? I've been writing about you. There's something comforting about having your feet firmly planted on a century you're used to. Well, I've got to prep the dressing room. The burlesque girls are back tomorrow and someone always steals the rhinestones. Nora glanced at her sneakers, damp from the rain that had since stopped. You do, Nora declined. With a phone in her hand, walked into Jazz like it was dry land. The kind that happens when two people have nothing urgent to say, but everything in common beneath the surface. There's a man. Name's Charlie Denton. He works at the New York Herald. Covers oddities, disappearances, things that don't make the morning edition. You might want to talk to him. Wears a brown hat with a feather in it, walks like he owes someone money. She carries stars in her eyes and Wi-Fi in her soul. He once claimed he saw a man vanish in Grand Central Station. Might be worth asking. Her laughter is proof that fate isn't whole. Jack wandered over and dropped into a nearby chair, the notebook still in hand. Both, Ruby said, holding out her sandwich. Want some? I'm not a mystery, I'm just a detour. No thanks, Jack said, eyeing the sandwich like it owed him money. Be careful. People in this town like their mysteries unsolved. Change what? I don't even know how I got here, let alone why. Jack was already scribbling in his notebook again, as if capturing the moment before it faded. Jack tapped the notebook. Spoken like someone who's never stepped on a Lego. He smiled at that. Fair. Nora pulled her coat tight, walking into the night with her thoughts louder than her footsteps. Ruby stood and stretched. As she left, Jack tilted his head toward the notebook. Nora raised an eyebrow. I'm flattered. And slightly alarmed. You inspire strange poetry, not all of it good. She leaned forward. Read me one. He cleared his throat theatrically. All right, here goes. She fell out of time. Nora blinked. That's surprisingly good. I said not all of it was bad, he said with a wink. A waiter passed by offering deviled eggs and something that looked like a jellied pineapple on toast. Jack took the toast. You really don't belong here, Jack said after a pause. I know, she said, then added more quietly, but it feels like I do. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Then Jack leaned in. Does he know how to get someone back to the future? Jack shrugged. Nora nodded slowly. Where do I find him? He drinks at the Grey Dog Saloon, 2 blocks from here. Nora stood. I'll go tomorrow. Jack looked up at her. She gave him a crooked smile. Aren't we all? He said, eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite name. As Nora made her way out of the lounge, she glanced back once. Out on the street, the city glistened under gaslights and a moon that seemed too close, too silver. If she was going to find a way home, she'd need more than poetry and charm. She needed answers. And maybe, just maybe, a little more time. The Grey Dog Saloon smelled like spilled gin, old varnish, and secrets. Nora stood outside for a few seconds, hesitating. The carved dog head above the door leered down like it knew she didn't belong. Cigarette smoke hung low like a ceiling, and the only light came from green-shaded lamps and the flicker of a fireplace that looked ready to collapse. Most of the patrons were hunched over their drinks, muttering to themselves or playing slow games of poker with more lies than chips on the table. Then she saw him. Jazz didn't play here. Sipping from a chipped glass and eyeing a stack of papers like they were written in Morse code. Nora approached slowly, her boots sticking to the floor in places she didn't want to think about. This place wasn't for dancing, it was for forgetting. She took a breath, adjusted her coat collar, and stepped inside. My name's Nora. I was told you're the kind of person who believes in odd things. It was dim and cramped. She scanned the room. Brown hat, feather, walking like rent was due yesterday. Charlie Denton. He sat alone at a crooked table in the back. Charlie stared at the black screen like it might bite him. And a camera. He leaned back, rubbing the stubble on his chin. Spring of 19, a woman in Harlem vanished in the middle of her shift. She was last seen staring into a puddle that wasn't there when the cops arrived. A few people swore the puddle shimmered like a mirror, never found her, and a map. And ... look, never mind. Once, years ago, Grand Central, just a shimmer, like heat off pavement. But it was winter, and no one else saw it. But the puddle? It came back, showed up in photos people took days later. Shiny spot. Even indoors. I need to know if there's any way back. If anyone else has ever disappeared like this. Somewhere nearby, a glass broke. I'll dig through my files, see what I can find. No one flinched. But if this is real, and I'm not saying it is, you're not the first. Which means there might be a way home. He tapped it. One more thing. If you find the puddle again, don't just step in it. No buttons. What is this? A mirror? Then he laughed. Well, I've heard worse pickup lines. Once, a man told me he was the reincarnation of Cleopatra's cat. Depends who's asking. If it's the IRS, I'm dead. If it's my ex-wife, I'm deader. I don't know how I got here. I was in New York, but in 2025, I stepped in a puddle, and the next thing I knew, I was in a different century. I still have my phone. It doesn't work, but it's real. Excuse me, Mr. Denton? Which is it? He looked up, suspicious, but not unfriendly. It's neither, she said. He set his glass down. That's putting it politely. Sit. She pulled out the creaky chair and sat across from him. You look like a school teacher or a ghost. Neither. I think I'm from the future. Charlie blinked twice. I'm serious. So was he. He hissed at me. Nora leaned in. She pulled it from her pocket. It's a phone. Charlie's joking demeanor softened. There was a case. Nora's breath caught. Did she come back? Nope. I need to find that place. Charlie pulled a notebook from his coat pocket and started scribbling. Harlem's a big neighborhood. You'll need to narrow it down. Have you ever seen it? Nora asked. He paused. What did you do? I blinked and it was gone. They sat in silence for a while. Charlie pushed the notebook toward her. If you're serious, start there. Thank you, she said. He nodded. You're not crazy. Just misplaced. As she stood to leave, Charlie added, why not? Because last time I checked, most people who fall into time don't land on their feet. The subway groaned as it slowed into the 125th Street station, spewing sparks and groaning like it had been holding its breath since the last century. Each place he'd marked had once been a storefront or a chapel or a soda fountain. Most were long gone now, replaced by a jazz club or a seamstress or a butcher shop. Then another. Her shoes crunched on broken glass. She glanced down and her breath caught. A thin trail of water, just a few inches wide, ran along the center of the alley. It hadn't rained in days. She stopped in front of a small alley behind a bakery. The notebook called it Mirror Alley. Nora stepped off and was hit by the smell of coal, oil, and something sweet baking in the distance. Harlem in 1923 was alive, but something about the air felt heavy here. Like it was waiting, pulsing with brass horns and shouted greetings from corner to corner. Even the buildings looked like they were leaning in to hear the gossip. She was older, dressed in a bright scarf and a coat that looked borrowed from 5 different decades. Her eyes were sharp, like she saw through people before they spoke. I have a life, a job, a family, but knowing is dangerous. Most folk who find their way here either get lost or don't come back quite right. It only opens if it knows you, but it might be the key. I've seen things pass through that puddle paper, ink, even sound. If the shimmer starts to glow when you're near it, you're getting close to a crossing point, but be careful. Not every shimmer leads home. Some lead elsewhere. The puddle shimmered, just barely, but not with light. It shimmered with color. Blue 1 second, then green, then a flash of something like gold. It was wrong. Beautiful and wrong. Nora clutched Charlie's notebook in one hand and adjusted her coat with the other. She had circled the block twice already. There was nothing mirror-like about it. It was just bricks, fire escapes, and a metal trash bin that had seen better decades. You could end up in 1912 or 1492 or Mars, for all I know. She took a step in. She crouched. Jazz spilled from an open window above, wild and chaotic like her thoughts. She had more questions than when she started, but now at least she had a compass. Don't touch that. Nora jumped and turned to find a woman standing behind her. You're not from here, the woman said. Not from this time. Nora backed up a step. Who are you? Call me Miss Addie. Do you know what this is? I do. I think I met a time witch. I don't have a choice. I don't belong in this time. Miss Addie raised a skeptical brow. No one belongs in any time. We just make do with the one we got. I need to go back. You have a phone, Miss Addie said, nodding to the bulge in Nora's pocket. That's what keeps humming. Nora hesitated, then pulled it out. It doesn't work. Not now. How do I activate it? Miss Addie smiled like someone who's seen too many foolish questions. That puddle isn't a door. It's a mirror. Nora frowned. That makes no sense. Neither does falling through time, honey, but here you are. Miss Addie reached into her bag and pulled out a tiny silver pendant. Take this. Elsewhere? Other whens. Otherwheres. I just want to get back to 2025, then walk careful. And maybe stop asking so many questions with easy answers. Nora looked down at the puddle again. This time, it didn't shimmer. Just reflected her, looking lost and tired. Thank you, she said, standing up. Miss Addie tipped her hat. I didn't help. I warned. Nora slipped the pendant around her neck and walked back toward the street. Back in the saloon later that night, Charlie looked up from his drink as she returned. Well, he asked. She held up the pendant. He grinned. Only in Harlem. Nora stood in front of the subway entrance at 42nd Street. The pendant Miss Addie had given her swinging like a compass needle against her chest. It had begun to hum softly, no light, no spark, just a quiet vibration like the feeling you get before a storm. Charlie waited beside her, his satchel over one shoulder, nervous energy bouncing off him like static. So, this is it? She nodded. It has to be. Let me come with you. You don't belong there. Times Square buzzed with electric signs and energy, but it wasn't her world. These people didn't know what a Wi-Fi signal was. They didn't know what TikTok or Google Maps or digital cameras were. But they knew music. They knew love. They knew how to dance and how to live like time wasn't a curse. Neither do you, not anymore, he said. Nora looked up. Charlie, she said gently, your time matters. The platform was half empty, filled with people in hats and gloves and shoes that clicked. The train roared up, screaming steel and steam. They climbed aboard. He looked away. So does yours. They stepped into the subway. At the far end of the car was a reflective panel, not quite glass, not quite metal. Nora stared at it. The hum from the pendant grew louder. I think that's it, she said. Looks like a boilerplate, Charlie muttered. No, she whispered. It's watching, he snorted. You sound insane. I probably am. As they passed through the tunnels, the panel's surface rippled once. Then again, Nora stepped closer. They stood side by side, a train rumbling beneath them. Are you ready? Charlie asked. Lights swirled like a whirlpool. Her phone. She pulled it out. She was in a subway station, but it wasn't 1923 anymore. It was hers, crowded, noisy, indifferent. She stumbled out into the street and gasped. Cars honking, people talking to their AirPods. She turned in a full circle and laughed like someone who had just woken up from a fever dream. Full signal. A text from her mom. Where are you? A soft wind picked up inside the train. Papers rustled. Collapsing on the same bench she'd started at a week or a century ago. She stared at her reflection in a phone screen. Same face. Same confusion. But everything was different. People looked around, puzzled. On the back, scribbled in tiny pencil, "Don't forget me, future girl." One woman clutched her coat tighter. No, but I don't have a choice. Familiar eyes, messy hair, jeans and a hoodie. In one hand, he held an umbrella. Maybe someone will see it and wonder who inspired it. He reached into his bag and pulled out the drawing she had given him of the Empire State Building. I'll finish this someday. I don't know. All I know is it rained and I followed. She smiled, put a coffee shop on the 80th floor. Done. She touched the pendant. It pulsed once, then faded. The panel grew brighter. Nora stepped forward. Her fingers brushed the panel. The train screeched. The world blinked, and then it was quiet. She woke up face down on cold tile. A buzzing filled her ears. Something sharp pressed into her ribs. The date said April 11th, 2025. Nora stood, blinking at the harsh fluorescent lights. Times Square, neon, LED, screens the size of buildings. A man in a hoodie gave her a weird look. She didn't care. She walked until her legs gave out. She took out the drawing Charlie had given her before she left. A voice called her name. She looked up. A young man stood in front of her. "You dropped this a long time ago?" he said. She stared. "Charlie," he grinned. "I've been waiting." "But how?" He shrugged. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you." She stood slowly. "Are you real?" "You tell me." She reached out and touched his arm. Warm, solid, present. They walked in silence through the noise of 2025. He looked at the digital billboards with awe. She looked at him. "Coffee?" he asked. She laughed. "Only if it's on the 80th floor."